Good evening, and welcome back to another episode of Friday Night Fireside Chats. I'm your host, Roy. If you are new to this podcast, welcome. Friday Night Fireside Chats is a time to slow down and reflect at the end of what might be a busy week, and just taking a time to allow yourself to decompress and conclude the evening and enter into the weekend with a greater sense of rest. For tonight's topic, I will be talking about and sharing some thoughts around self-love. Now, this topic is inspired by my own personal journey and experiences with coming to being able to love myself, to really like myself and fall in love with myself. And as a reminder of this journey in the work that I do with my clients. And so I think perhaps a place I would like to start is, I guess, the struggle in the beginning to even be able to love myself. Because that was something that for a good portion of my life I did not experience. But in fact, my identity and value and self-worth were based on what I could do. The quality of work that I could accomplish. So very much performance-based and very perfectionistic and very much self-conscious. Always thinking, well, what are other people going to think of me? What are they going to think of this? And how can I do this in a way that pleases other people? And no more did I notice this lack of self-esteem and self-love than I did in romantic pursuits. There was a time in elementary school where there was this girl in my elementary school, and I would say that was probably the first person that I ever really liked. And this is elementary school. Kids don't really know exactly what they're doing. You're just like, hey, I like you. Want to be friends? Or hey, I like this person. And I had a couple of friends where I think one day we, for whatever reason, just decided to all share who we had a crush on. And it seemed like there was just this unspoken assumption of, all right, we're just gonna talk about who we have a crush on, and that's that. But unbeknownst to me, one of my friends actually ended up telling the girl that I liked that I like her. And when I found out, I was pretty upset. I was like, you weren't supposed to tell that to her. This was just between us. Like, we were just talking. That's all that we're doing. So obviously I, sought revenge on him and decided to tell the girl that he liked that he likes her. Ah, man, good memory. But I bring that story up because it being kind of that first experience of me liking a girl who, because my friend had told her that I liked her, directly asked me hey, who do you like? And being an elementary school kid, still being very, I guess, I don't know, shy or awkward with all of that stuff. And, as an elementary school kid, it's to be expected. I said, the person I like is the person that my friend told you that I like. I couldn't say, I like you. I think I probably would have exploded. So I just said, the person that I like is the person that my friend told you that I like. And she kind of just mulled over that for a little bit and then said, I like you too. And I didn't even say anything. I just nodded my head with a mouthful of corn dog. This was, I think, probably what I was eating that day for lunch. I just nodded my head, and then I got up. I got up and left. And on the inside though, was I was soaring. And right after that, I went straight to recess and played this game called Foursquare. So I played this game called Foursquare. I don't even remember the game. Like, if I played well, and even if I didn't, I probably didn't care, because it was like, oh, my crush actually likes me back. And that was thrilling, to experience, not even just as an elementary school kid, but just as a kid, as a living being, to kind of express something to someone and have it reciprocated. Now there was a sad ending to that really had nothing to do with either one of us, but it was more a interruption and a blocking from my own mom. And kind of the whole idea was, hey, you're a kid, like, shouldn't really be focused on this kind of stuff, just like pay attention to your schooling, work hard there, and you can worry about girls some other time. And that was, I won't go into the stories of that, but that was really crushing. And I think that, among other experiences, left me with a sense of, unconsciously, I kind of internalized this sense of, what I want, I can't have. What I want is, somehow I should be ashamed of that. And I think therein came this sense of eventual buildup of lower and lower self-esteem, because the sense was, this honest expression of desire, enjoyment of someone is now tainted. And so perhaps that also means something about me is tainted. And clearly from that point on, in terms of pursuing romantic relationships, there's always been kind of that same nervousness as an elementary school kid. But after that experience with my mom's interruption, I think I always questioned my right to be able to pursue romantic interests. And so, even though I did many, many times, the self-esteem was not there. And not to say that as an elementary school kid, when my crush said that she also liked me back, uh, I'm sure there's a possibility that if she said she didn't, um, that might also have a blow to my self-esteem. It's hard to say, can't really know since that wasn't what happened. But the experience thereafter, and my mom's interruption certainly had that impact. And there was an aspect of, I think, codependence that I developed where my sense of self-worth really became rooted in other people's approval. And there's plenty of history and reasons, experiences that play into that, not just romantic pursuits, not just my mom's interruption in that one instance, but all of them kind of compiled together really struck home this sense of I'm just not good enough, I'm not worthy, and so therefore I need to, this feeling is awful and I don't want it there, so I need to do everything in my power to be the exact opposite. And that was through work, that was through performance, action. And that is an element that I think other people can sense. I imagine if you were to consider, who in your life you respect, you could probably think of a few people. And I imagine if you were to think of a few people in your life, whether close or not close, people who you, not that you don't respect them, but you don't really, I guess, see them as people with a strong sense of solidity within themselves. I'm sure you could think of a few people as well. And for me, for most of my life, that was the case. I was definitely the latter. And with this aspect of codependence, where it's like, my identity is based on other people and their approval of me, I brought a lot of that baggage into these romantic pursuits. In high school, that was when I had my first girlfriend, and it was an amazing feeling. But there also was a point where probably wasn't that long, maybe a month or two max into the relationship, she had voiced that, she kind of wanted to break up. And I remember just completely losing it, crying, contacting her friends, just begging them. It's like, please talk to her, tell her, to reconsider. And eventually we got back together, and then later the relationship ended. But it was very crushing an experience. And then later in college, an instance of a girl who I really liked. We didn't even have a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. It was more so this one-sided, like, oh, I really like you. And when she kind of left, I cried for, I think, probably it was 2 weeks. And by left, I mean, like, there was another guy that got her attention. It was not me. I was not chosen. And so for 2 weeks, I was crying about it. And to think back about it now, I'm like, gosh, Roy, 2 weeks? Really? But I can have that compassion for myself as well. It's like, you only knew what you knew at that time. And at that time, the perception was that she was everything. But that being another stark indication of, man, so much value and sense of worth is being located in another person's approval of you. Like, if you can be in this relationship, if they would accept you and mutually reciprocate this relationship, then you have value. Then it means you're finally good enough. That happened a few more times in grad school. 3 consecutive women and 3 consecutive kind of no, just want to be friends response. And it took all those experiences. Like, it was after the third one that I just was exhausted, and for the first time pissed off. That was the difference. Was well, that's not completely true. I think there were times before where I was also pissed off at the women that I liked, and it wasn't reciprocated, and they went for another guy. I think I felt anger then as well, but it was more repressed. I think this time, for the third person that I tried with and was not reciprocated in grad school, I really tapped into that anger, and just had this sense of, like, you know what? Women just suck, and they don't know what they're missing. They don't know what they want. How could she, et cetera, et cetera. And I, at that time, in grad school, was in grad school for my master's in counseling. And so there's a part of our program that requires that we do our own counseling. The whole idea is, you need to know what it's like to sit in the chair as a client. Otherwise, you have no right to counsel somebody, because you need to know what it's like to be in that seat. And I really appreciate that approach. So at the same time, going through my grad school program, also doing my own counseling, and then later branching out to other, I guess you call them healers, coaches, whatever you want to refer to, but people who work in this field of bringing greater self-understanding. And it was working with one of these people that I really had to face my self-hate and self-loathing, because that was at the core of the low self-esteem and the desperate attempts to try to find my worth in a relationship. And ultimately, that was probably one of the most scary, sad things to have to do. I don't think that's something that I'll go into too much detail besides that. It can sound a little vague. What does that entail? I think, long story short, it really is just looking at an honest mirror, really look into the mirror and being like, okay, so all I see is self-hate and self-loathing, low self-esteem. And I don't want to look at that, but gosh, this is the third failed attempt. So I could say either all women suck, a very convenient but also non-responsible conclusion, or I can say somehow I just seem to have a knack for pushing women away. And the common denominator in all these scenarios is me. So what do I have to see and address within myself that I have not been willing to? Like this is the straw that broke the camel's back. So what is going on here? And at the end of it, it was really getting to the root of the self-loathing and really, really feeling into it, feeling into that deep well of grief, hate, anger, and just, I think almost, it did take a process, like doing that for some time, because it is a process. But eventually there's this organic evolution of self-compassion, because there's this understanding that it's like I can't make anybody like me, as much as I hated to admit that and have to face that was the truth. I can't make anybody like me. I can't make anybody love me. And if somebody tried to do that with me, I certainly would resent them for that. And so the thought went, well, if I can't make anybody like me or love me, and violate their own free will, what do I want to do about this? And then came the sense of, well, if I can't make anybody do that, and I can't do that and I can't or am not willing to do that for myself, that doesn't leave me with many options. And so I thought, well, what if I could do that for myself? What if I could accept and love myself? And it was possible to entertain that question and consider that after developing more self-understanding of where that self-loathing came from. Because it wasn't like I was came out of the womb, I'm pulled out the womb by whoever pulled me out of the womb, and the first thing I say to them as they pull me out is, I'm a fucking piece of shit. That I doubt any infant who is born said those first words as they came out from their mother's womb. And so through the process of my own counseling, it's like, okay, I'm beginning to see where these messages came from, and can now begin to challenge them. It's like, oh, okay, that's where I made that conclusion. That's where I internalized it. And that brought about the shift. And so now, at that point in my healing journey, asking myself, what if I could love myself? I then it was more of a visual experience. Pictured holding my inner child, and he was just like this very frail and emaciated, abandoned, wearing tattered rags little kid, and I just held him, and I told him, like, how big a deal it was that he was here, that he survived, that he made it, and that he's still here. That he went through a lot. He had his ordeal. And by doing that for myself, being able to parent myself, my younger self as my adult self, that changed everything. Because I really believe that the one that we're looking for, whatever it is in our life that we feel like, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for someone to give me meaning. The one that we're looking for is ourselves. That you are the one that you've been looking for all this time. You're that hero, you're that savior. It's not anybody else. And that made all the difference. To be able to be my best friend. Knowing that, I came into this world alone. In the sense that, I'm the single infant that came through my mom's womb at that moment in time. It wasn't like somebody else was in the womb with me. I'm like, all right, here we go. We're coming out here together. And same goes for when I die, when I pass and transition from this current incarnation of life and consciousness. I could have loved ones around my deathbed, but in the end, that journey of death is still mine to take. Others are not coming with me. And so I thought, if there's always going to be moments in my life where I will be alone, and even if I were in a romantic partnership, there are still times where I'll be alone. There might be times where I actually really want to be alone. As much as I may love my partner, I don't necessarily want her to be there in every aspect of my life 24/7. I would want my own time. And so it's like, if I'm inevitably going to experience times of being alone, I might as well be able to actually enjoy myself and actually like myself, because otherwise it's all about avoidance. And I think that's the aspect that I see, that not just with my clients, but so many in our people in our world, that seems to be the struggle. Self-acceptance, self-love. And we have all these ways in which we turn to other people or things, activities. Maybe it's possessions, maybe it's our job. Something to give us a sense of value. Not just meaning or like purpose. Oh, okay, I have a purpose here. But a sense of value. Because I have this person in my life, or I have this object, or I have this job, it means I'm not a complete failure. And I think there's definitely a good number of people where they, maybe not consciously, but maybe subconsciously, live their lives that way. That there's this subconscious need to justify their value and their worth. And that on a deeper level, it's not because they necessarily believe they carry a lot of value and an inherent worth, but it's almost like this overcompensation of, no, I need to do all these things. I need to have this person. I need to have this material. Or need to have this job, whatever it is. Because if I don't, I can't bear bear what I would have to deal with. I can't bear the idea and the feeling of having to be with myself, the part of me that actually hates me, and the part of me that actually doubts that I have any value, just for being who I am. And I think something I want to offer to anybody who feels that, who can relate to that, is to face that honest mirror, to look into that honest mirror, and to really work with that self-loathing and the origins and roots of that, where those messages came from, is a very painful journey. There's a lot of tears, a lot of anger, and I can't tell you how impactful it was and continues to be to have been able to look into that mirror and really do that work. I would not trade it. That pain, the grief, the tears, the anger, were so worth it to get to this other side that I could not see at the time. I didn't know where I would be now. But all that heartache, and how most of this I was talking about was based on romantic pursuits. All those failed attempts, all those tears over these women and unrequited affection was worth it. Because looking back now, I'm like, those failed attempts were the key ingredients to actually get me to face myself, to actually get closer to the core of my troubles. Because if I didn't have those failed attempts, I would likely perhaps not ever had to dive this deeply into my own psyche and into my own soul. And I had this image, and it was a very poignant moment when I expressed this. But this was a time when I was talking with a circle of friends about how I imagined God's love for me. I would say my spirituality certainly has shifted since that time. But at the time, when I was trying to communicate with them, like what I believed God's love for me felt like, I had talked about this young child that's trapped under a building that has collapsed due to an earthquake. And then I said, God is this person. He's on the outside, and he's just pulling away at all the rubble. And he doesn't give a damn how long it takes to clear the rubble. He'll be there all night, and the next day, and the next if he has to scrap away and move away all that rubble just so he can pull me out. Because he cares for me. And I was like crying as I was sharing that imagery. From where I am now, I look at that image and I, for myself, see it as I am that child that I described, and I am also that man that I described. It is not to me. Anyways, I say this to me. it can be different for other people. But to me, I am that man that I've been looking for. I am that quote unquote savior or God that I've been looking for. And to be able to have that realization that I am the one that I've been looking for, I really can't put into words how that feels. Other than just to say, it was worth it. Every damn tear, every shred of anger that I felt, it was all fucking worth it. To find that piece of myself. And it's like, would I love validation from other people? Absolutely. And would I be okay even if I didn't receive it? Yes, I would. I would. And I think that shift, when a person can love and appreciate and even just simply like themselves, like, man, I like you. I like spending time with you. That radiates out to the external world. Like, other people see it and they feel it. And that's the difference between, in this instance, let's just talk about men. Between a man who has that self-love and liking for himself compared to a man who does not. If they're both pursuing, let's say, the same woman, chances are pretty high that she would go for the man who likes himself, who has that self-love and self-esteem. Unless, of course, she herself might have low self-esteem, then she might go with the other guy. But assuming she has that self-value and self-worth established well within herself, she's likely going to go for the guy who has it within himself as well. Because the whole, I think, kicker for me of finally understanding this was, if I don't even like myself, I don't even respect myself, I don't even love myself, how the heck can I expect somebody else to do that for me? Like, if they get a sense, and they do, often it's nonverbal, that I don't have that sense of self-love and self-esteem, it certainly does not sell me well. Of like, hey, come on, buy this thing that I don't even like. Just using that as a metaphor or analogy. So ultimately, I think much of my work is with my clients is around self-understanding and self-love. And kind of for anybody out there who wrestles with that, I have love and compassion for you, because I can't say I know exactly how it feels for you, but I know that feeling of anguish in regards to self-doubt, self-loathing, self-hate, and there's something on the other side of that. And if you can look into that mirror, you can jump into that well of your own grief, anger, confusion, self-hate, that you'll find something else underneath all of that. It might take some time, to bucket out that well of grief and anger. But when you get there and can really embrace this, this inner child within you, and have compassion for that part of you, that is likely when you'll notice something shift. And maybe in the beginning it doesn't even seem that big, but something will happen. And may you discover that the one you've been looking for is yourself. The love and acceptance that you've been looking for is from yourself, from you to you. And with that, we'll conclude tonight's episode. Thank you all for tuning in for tonight's episode. If you want to learn more about the work that I do, you can visit my website at www.sacredwildman.com. And if you would like to support the work that I do, if you felt that it has had a positive impact in your life, or it's just something that you feel, hey, I really like what you do and I want to support it, you can find a donation link on the homepage of my website and support in that way. If you do, thank you. I appreciate all the support, and even just you tuning in. I wish you all a great and restful Friday evening and a restful weekend.